At the beginning of the 19th century, conflict was boiling across Latin America, driven by a desire for economic and political freedoms, rights long denied under Spanish colonial rulers. The Bourbon reforms and Napoleon's invasion of Spain, which installed Joseph Bonaparte as king, intensified grievances over exploitive policies like the Royal Fifth Tax. The revolutions that followed were driven by a desire to gain rights denied by oppressive rulers and a sense of responsibility to fight for freedom and self-governance. Leaders like Simón Bolívar united diverse populations under the shared goal of independence. Ultimately, these revolutions greatly determined the future of Latin America, as it led to the creation of several South American countries out of the former Spanish colonies. Although the revolutions dismantled colonial rule and raised ideals of freedom, such as ending the caste system, abolishing slavery, and advocating for women's rights, many of these societal rights were undermined in the post-revolutionary period as societies reverted to pre-revolutionary norms. The Latin American revolutions highlight the struggle to balance the pursuit of rights with the responsibility to sustain the rights once they were secured.
The Latin American independence movements were a series of revolutions spanning from the late 18th to the mid-19th centuries. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain and installed Joseph Bonaparte as Spain's king. Spanish people refused to recognize the legitimacy of Joseph, so regional juntas started taking over in certain areas of Spain and the New World colonies. This political instability was used by revolutionary leaders like Simón Bolívar to begin leading military campaigns against Spanish rule. Major battles include the Battle of Boyaca in 1819 and the Battle of Ayacucho in 1824, which secured decisive victories for the independence movement. Throughout the 1820s and 1830s, former Spanish colonies declared their independence and formed new nations. Argentina gained independence on 9th July 1816. Costa Rica, Guatemala, and El Salvador on 15 September 1821, Bolivia on 6 August 1825. By the mid-19th century, the majority of Latin American countries were independent. This period of time was known as the Age of Revolutions, and laid the foundation for many of the nations that exist in Latin America today.
One major reason that the people of Latin America were aggrieved was because of the Bourbon reforms. These reforms aimed to centralize power and boost Spanish revenue, but weaken local autonomy and deepen inequality, particularly for indigenous, mixed-race, and African populations. Even Creoles, high in the caste system, felt alienated as their political influence was curtailed. These tensions helped ignite revolution. The second reason there was a large push for Latin American independence was Napoleon's invasion of Spain during the Napoleonic Wars. Before this, Spain was facing social and political unrest, even in the Iberian Peninsula. Manuel de Godoy, who was the chief minister and King Charles IV's favorite military officer, was unpopular with nobles and citizens of Spain. This, combined with economic instability and the entry of Napoleon's troops in order to invade Portugal, sparked the tumult of Aranjuez. This uprising resulted in the arrest of Godoy and the forced abdication of Charles IV in favor of his son Ferdinand. However, when Ferdinand went to Napoleon to gain his support, Napoleon instead pressured him to give the throne back to his father. In the end, Napoleon placed his older brother, Joseph Bonaparte, on the throne because of his distrust of the Spanish monarchy. The Spanish resisted this decision, starting the Peninsular War. Although Spain eventually regained its monarchy, the chaos weakened its colonial grip and opened the door for uprisings across Latin America.
The conquistadors implemented numerous exploitive policies to enrich themselves at the expense of indigenous people. One such policy was the encomienda system, which forced indigenous people to provide labor and tributes. This engraving depicts the brutal abuse of enslaved indigenous people by Spanish conquistadors. Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas reported that conquistador Nuño de Guzman enslaved over 4,000 free men, women, and children in Jalisco. He said that the women, having just given birth, carried loads for the bad Christians. Not being able to carry the infants due to the work and weakness from hunger, the women left them by the roads, where infinite numbers of infants perished. The friar also wrote the short account of the destruction of the Indies in 1552 about the rights and treatment of the indigenous people. Indigenous communities repeatedly reported their abuse to the Spanish monarchy, detailing the mistreatment they endured. In a letter to the Bishop of Laxa, Philip II expressed concern about the natives. He noted that women would miscarry from the work they were being forced to do, or kill their children upon birth, saying that they would do it to free them from the abuse that they suffered. While the Spanish monarchy issued laws aimed at reducing the mistreatment of native people, like mandating a 2-hour noon break for workers, these regulations were often ignored by colonial administrators who let exploitation and abuse continue.
Often called the Liberator, Simón Bolívar played a crucial role in the Latin American revolutions. Along with his dream to become independent from Spanish rule, he also wanted to unite the newly freed territories of Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama into a republic called Gran Colombia. He envisioned a unified Latin America that would be free from caste discrimination and slavery. He offered freedom to enslaved people who fought in the wars and supported federalism balanced with central governance. As Gran Colombia's president, Bolívar centralized power to preserve order, though his vision ultimately fractured by 1831 due to internal conflict. Still, his leadership underscores the difficulty of sustaining rights and responsibilities after revolution.
As the Latin American revolutions come to a close, the citizens of their countries have claimed the responsibility and the right to govern themselves. They entered the revolutions with dreams of freedom and being united under the country of Gran Colombia. The economics of the Latin American colonies were an important reason for independence. The Spanish had declared a royal fifth tax, where they would get a fifth of everything the colonies made. They would also make the colonies buy products for inflated prices from Spain. Although the colonies now had these economic freedoms, they soon lost the vision of revolutionizing their societal views, especially after the death of Simón Bolívar. The rights gained by women during the revolutions were lost due to decreased need for labor after the revolutions, as well as the continuity of the harsh caste system. This reversion back to their previous societal rights meant the revolution did not change very much for Latin American citizens in the short term. In the long term, after the Latin American revolutions and the death of Simón Bolívar, the nation of Gran Colombia balkanized into many separate states. The appreciation of Simón Bolívar is shown in the naming of the country Bolivia and the Venezuelan currency, the Bolívar. Now that Latin American citizens were free from their ties to Europe, they began to interact with the North American states that had also recently declared their independence. At first, they disputed over borders. However, once they agreed upon territory, they felt a mild sense of kinship from having both declared independence from European states recently. This led to trade and later a highly impactful free trade agreement called NAFTA between Mexico, the United States, and Canada, through the new economic freedoms of the Latin American countries, showing the long-term impact of the revolutions, even though in the short term the Latin American states had regressed to previous societal norms.